The revenge of the Autopen. It really is coming back to haunt poor Joe Biden in a massive way, because this thing is going to take him down, his whole administration down, people around him down, as we get more and more talk of whether or not people were paying for pardons. I mean, that's a big part of the question. The Autopen in and of itself, right, is bad. And it probably means that all those pardons that were going down are going to be null and void. But this scandal could be so much bigger than that. And I think that's what people are really worried about, that we're part of that Biden administration. I mean, granted, it goes without saying that a lot of those orders that he put into place and a lot of the pardons that he put into place were probably illegal, right? Because there's this little thing called the Constitution, and that means that, you know, per Article 2 in the Constitution, you actually have to have the president, and I quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Well, the president can't. Because the president is incapacitated, because the president is out to lunch, because the president is unfortunately perhaps very, very sick, then who's actually running the country? And if you don't have someone that is an elected official running the country, well, then you would have to enact the 25th Amendment, would you not? But since they didn't enact the 25th Amendment, it actually may mean that all of Biden's pardons and all of his orders will be challenged. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. The obvious elephant in the room is who the heck was running the country the whole darn time? I mean, who really was? I mean, we know these things are going to have to be voided. They're going to be challenged legally. Then we're going to find out who exactly was getting paid to make them happen. But as Caroline Levitt said last night on my former colleague Sean Hannity's show on Fox, you know what? The president is, well, she didn't say that. You know where I'm going, because he is. He's like, what the heck was going down? Who was running this country? The USA. What, was being run by a bunch of 20-some-odd-year-old staffers? Maybe Blinken, maybe Jill Biden, maybe Jill Biden's chief of staff. Here's Caroline.
He's demanding answers. And one of the things he is going to continue to push for answers on is who the heck was running the country over the past 4 years. This is truly the greatest political scandal our country has ever seen. We had unelected, radical left White House staffers who nobody knew their names running the most powerful country in the history of the world. And the Democrat Party was in a complete alliance to cover it up. And the mainstream media was right along with them. They were asking Joe Biden what his favorite ice cream was, rather than asking him whether or not he was suited to run the country. And so we need answers on what took place over the past 4 years, because look at the consequences of having these unelected radical left-wing staffers in the West Wing running the country. We had a wide open border invasion that this administration is cleaning up every day despite challenges from the courts. We had an economy that was left in the dust.
Exactly. And you know what? If you guys actually had somebody in office that knew what they were doing, that had been properly elected, then you know what? You might have gotten another 4 years, but you were too stupid and too, I don't know, Machiavellian, some of you. Blinken, I might be looking at you, right? So you thought that you could control all this, and then in controlling all this, you actually were your own worst enemy. And so now there are other things coming into question, as in, not just who was running the country, but if nobody was really running the country, if everybody was asleep at the switch, then how much would it have cost to get a pardon? And might some of the staffers been involved in, I don't know, selling pardons? Because Biden wasn't doing this. We know that. This actually came up. Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee brought this up on our friend Benny's show. A great show, by the way. I want to go to this soundbite because this is important to hear. And he's making the point that, he doesn't actually have any evidence, but this has happened where he's come from. It's certainly happened before. They've even written songs about it. And we need to be realists here, because there was no one in charge.
Got staffers. I would look. Tennessee has had a history of this. We had a governor several governors ago. He's since passed away, but he sold pardons. You can look it up. His name was Ray Blanton. It made national news, and I mean they wrote songs, "Pardon Me, Ray," and it was a cash for clemency deal. And that's exactly what I think you're going to find out. You're going to find staffers that were able to take forms, get them, and run them through some sort of bogus legal system, and then they auto-penned them. And there's probably people out on the street that shouldn't be, but somebody got rich off that. And wow. And I think those people, I hate to say it, but you'll see something probably horrible happen to some of those people because it goes up the chain. This is a very dangerous town to play games in. I have no direct proof of that, but I'm just talking about history. And if you got somebody making $100,000 a year and somebody offers you $250,000 in some safety deposit box.
Right. For the record, do you know how many pardons Biden actually issued? A grand total of 8,064 pardons. It is the highest number, like by many multiples, of any president to have ever issued in the U.S. to date. 4,245 acts of clemency, which included both pardons and commutations. Notably, on December 12th, remember this day, he commuted the sentences of nearly 1,500 individuals. He couldn't even sign 1,500 pieces of paper, for goodness sakes. That's why it was the Autopen. That was the Autopen doing sort of everything. It's just sort of unimaginable. And yet not, right? Because, hey, you look back on the Hunter Biden stuff and the fact that his dad was the vice president in charge of Ukraine policy, and then suddenly Hunter gets a job, no qualifications, working on the board of Burisma, where he's getting paid big bucks, like $600,000 a year. Like, nobody makes that on a board job. Why was he making that money? Oh, it was protection money for the now defunct shady energy company Burisma. And so it goes, right? Whether it's Chinese energy money or Romanian money or you name it, there was Hunter, right? Waiting in the wings, ready to cash in. And now we learn the Autopen, most in history, 8,064 pardons. And so I think, unfortunately, these questions have to be asked. And Tim Burchett is asking the right question. What exactly, and this is what needs to be answered, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to a whole bunch of other stuff. We got to clean that place up. We are draining the swamp, you bet, every single day now. And Donald Trump's talked about this, right? He's mentioned like these things can't actually be working because if the Autopen signed it, it wasn't Joe. It wasn't the president. Therefore, it can and should be legally challenged.
David, speaking of the Justice Department, President Trump has recently been saying that pardons issued by his predecessor, Joe Biden, may be invalid. What's that about?
Brett, that's right. President Trump's been talking about some of the later pardons at the end of then-President Biden's term, specifically those on the January 6th committee, saying that since they were signed with Autopen, they are invalid. But first, we don't know officially that those were signed with Autopen. And second of all, an OLC Office of Legal Counsel opinion from right here at the Justice Department in 2005 during the George W. Bush administration says that Autopens are valid. Today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt brought up the former president's frame of mind and if President Biden was aware when he signed those pardons. But legal experts I've spoken to agree providing then President Biden's frame of mind, proving his frame of mind will not be easy in a court of law and don't view this as holding up in court.
Excuse me? All right. Well, granted, that was from a couple months ago, that little soundbite I played. This is when the first issue first came up. So I think a little bit has changed since then. And I'm just going to start with Jake Tapper's book. It's what we all knew. It's what we were all reporting, that this president was not in any kind of frame of mind to be doing anything, frankly. And so, yes, if that has to get proven out, I think you can probably prove it out pretty darn easily. Should we run the clips again? I could prove it out. I tried to tell y'all. Not the Democrats listen to the show. They should. They would have known better than to run that guy. And again, I go back to the reality of the U.S. Constitution. Article 2, thank you very much. The president, not the president's minions, must, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Therefore, if he was not actually making sure that anything was executed, then guess what? Good old Joe Biden was not really acting as the president of the United States. And therefore, if he's not acting as the president of the United States, guess what? Those things are null and void, as much as CNN and others want to fight it.
But the Autopen has become a common practice in the White House. Here we are talking about that and not about the hundreds of January 6th pardons that he proposed and implemented. in the White House that should be, maybe let's take a look at each and every one of them.
Well, he signed those. I think he did it on TV.
He signed those, but the Autopen process has been a common practice in the White House, and now he wants to invalidate.
Well, I don't think it's a common practice.
I actually don't think it's about the pen. I don't think it's about the pen. I think it's about the cognitive decline of Joe Biden that the press covered up for 4 years. It's about the fact that this could be. He's talking about elder abuse. He's talking about the cognition of the former president was highly questionable. And I'll give you some numbers about the FBI.
Demonstrate that if Trump is claiming that Biden had absolutely no idea what was going on here, don't you have to actually have evidence of that?
Well, okay, let's talk about whether Biden knew what he was talking about or not. Joe Biden gave interviews.
He called on dead reporters.
Joe Biden gave interviews where he talked. Okay, listen, and Donald Trump. Well,
she asked me a question.
Anna, just
okay, I'm now answering the question myself.
Just a second, okay? Finish your thought, and then you can jump in.
So we have lots of evidence of Biden's cognitive decline. He was calling on dead reporters in press conferences. He was shaking hands with ghosts that didn't exist. What? He couldn't even go, he was shaking hands with the air. He didn't know where to go. He had to be guided because he had no idea what was going on. He couldn't do a basic sentence without looking at a large car.
Let's say that all of this is true. Again, it's a very specific allegation here. I mean, just on a basic level. You got to be able to actually show proof of the thing that you're alleging, and there is no proof of any of this.
Well, AARP says that $28.3 billion in elder exploitation every year. FBI says $3.4 billion in internet crime against elders every year.
Okay,
this is a question about cognitive behavior.
That is proof that Biden used Autopen to sign the pardons and he didn't know about it?
There's a lot of evidence that those are
important statistics, but it has nothing to do with this conversation.
Well, here's the good thing. The good thing is that Donald Trump is going to be the...
all right, so... the wheels are coming off the bus on that one. But anyway, the point being that he was not in a mental state to actually sign those in the first place. So if you were going to actually argue that, in the day of technology, we're here and it's 2024 when he was signing these things, and we're here now in 2025 and the Autopen is just the way of the world, you would have to assume that you had a president who was capable mentally, physically, capable, knew what he was doing. You can go back to the Robert Hur testimony. For goodness sakes, they wouldn't even charge him the way they charged Trump, right? With making off with some files that he kept in his garage, locked up next to his Ferrari. They wouldn't even charge him because he was just a frail old man that couldn't remember a darn thing. Okay? So how could a frail old man that can't remember anything actually get through more than 8,000 pardons? How could he have reviewed that? The answer is he couldn't. How could he have signed off on any policies? The answer is he couldn't, and Donald Trump knows it.
Biden, look, it's a very sad thing what happened, but we're going to start looking into this whole thing with who signed this legislation. Who signed legislation opening our border? I don't think he knew. I said there's nobody that could want an open border. Nobody. And now I find out that it wasn't him. He auto-penned it. Who was operating the auto-pen? This is a very serious thing. We had a president that didn't sign anything. He auto-penned almost everything. He opened the borders of the United States of America. And I kept saying, who would do such a thing? Allowing criminals to pour in from all over the world, not just South America, all over the world. They came in from Africa. They came in from Asia. They came from the Congo. The prisons in the Congo in Africa, these are rough people. The prisons from the Congo are empty. You know where they are? They're in this country. Who would sign this? Nobody would sign it. No sane person would sign it. You know who signed it? Radical left lunatics that were running our country, and the Autopen signed it. And they didn't want him, and they were disappointed in getting him because they wanted Bernie Sanders. And then after about 2 weeks, they said, wait a minute, this is a gift. He'll do anything. We're going to use the Autopen. And they used the Autopen and everything. He didn't approve this.
You gotta love him, right? Hey, welcome. We got a new team member. John, great to have you here. Welcome to the broadcast. You gotta love him. You gotta love him because he's calling it out. He's calling them balls and strikes like a normal person would, because he's totally right. Like, who would come up with this insane policy? Like, other than I don't know, George Soros type people, right? That kind of believe in this whole open border. It wasn't good for anybody. It wasn't good for this country. We couldn't afford it. So who was doing this and who was issuing the pardons? I'm telling you, it's a problem. Because all of these things, whether they be treaties, whether they be pardons, executive actions, all of these things are now up for grabs. And they're going to be challenged in federal court. And the investigation is underway because, my gosh, this guy was in terrible shape. You know it. I know it. We all saw it.
And to the Gila Indian River community, the Gila, nothing wrong with me.
Nothing wrong. Okay, he kind of had a sense of humor earlier on, but it got worse and worse and worse.